Chumash tribes for our Native American Assembly. As a reminder, please follow all auditorium rules. Have your devices turned off, be safe, be respectful, and be responsible. Now, I will turn it over to Ms. Julia Samaniego.
Hello everyone, I would like to thank you for allowing me to be here today. We're going to start our day off with a land acknowledgement. So I myself, Julia Samaniego, would like to give a land acknowledgement to my ancestors who have fought, who did fight for our resilience to allow me to be here today to eventually tell our story and everything that we survived. So thank you to my ancestors from the Fernando Tataviam Band of Mission Indians. Sorry, 1 minute. Haminatam, Metewan, Kasekebu, Nu Kashien. Hello, my name is Fireflower Julia Samaniego. I am from the San Fernando Valley, a citizen of the Fernando Tataviam Band of Mission Indians, the native sovereign nation of northern Los Angeles County with historic ties to the mission of San Fernando. My family descendants from the villages of Siu Kanga, in Encino and Chacawanga at Six Flags, Magic Mountain, Tapu in Simi Valley, and Tochewang from Newhall. As a descendant of these valleys, I am honored to be here today. So thank you. So the Fernando Tataviam. We are called people facing the sun, with only 3 lineages surviving the mission. The Ortega lineage, which I come from, the Garcia lineage, as well as the Ortiz. The Tataviam Band of Mission Indians. Who are we? We are some of the first stewards of this land. My ancestors have been here for centuries, for thousands and thousands of years. And it's sad that in today's time, a lot of people don't even know we exist. They don't even know the traditional lands of the people that once were here and yet are still here. There's been so many times, as I have mentioned, once I'm native and I state where I come from, a lot of people don't even know that the Tataviam are in your backyard. We're down the street. So thank you again for allowing me to be here and tell you our story. We are originating in Simi Valley, San Fernando, Santa Clarita, as far as the Antelope Valley, which is where I grew up. And I couldn't believe finding out years and years later that I myself was also raised on my traditional lands, not even knowing that I was native. And we'll go into that. In 1821, Mexico gained independence from Spain and California. They fell under the jurisdiction of our first Mexican empire. After the missions were secularized by Mexico, approximately 50 surviving Fernandino leaders negotiated for and received several land grants, amounting to over 18,000 acres. These land grants included Rancho El Escorpion, which is Chapter, Encino, Burbank, Tahunga, and we were meant to preserve these lands during the American period. But throughout the 1800s, the United States was on a mission to eradicate indigenous natives, and in the era of the California state and federally funded genocide, I'm so sorry, let me move, baby. California Native American people and the Fernandinos lacked our U.S. citizen to defend our lands in our local state courts for several decades, to no avail. So even in today's time, we do not still have the rights of stewarding our lands, which is a tremendous hurt to ourselves as well as our traditions, to be able to teach the next generation our customs, to be able to teach them our language, to be able to learn our language. So like myself, as I was saying, I was not raised with my traditions due to our history of the 1800s. This is just an outline of one of our traditional villages and some of the area, which you can see, San Fernando, Burbank, all the way down to West Hollywood, the Calabasas, which would go all the way up to the 14, Palmdale, and Acton. In each of these locations, we had different villages, and even though we were still yet all connected. I'm so sorry, you guys. Our plant relatives of the Fernandino. So I say plant relatives because us as Native people, that's how we view our plants. Today, a lot of people view plants just like a typical plant, and it's utilized in that form. And if you were able to see, I did not say the word use, because use can be, you use everything. We use a cell phone, we use a car for transportation, we use a seat to sit on. But utilize, we try to obtain the blessings and what each plant or plant species is able to offer us. So for us, these plants are much more than just a plant. These are our ancestors, these are our relatives. These help us tell our story of how we're still here and why we're still here. These are helping us put the pieces to our puzzle back together. So I wanted today to show you and highlight just a couple of our plant relatives that had extremely significant meaning for us. One of them is our obvious, our beautiful white sage. A lot of people obviously know the traditional ways that this plant was utilized. It was definitely in the form of ceremonial purposes. A lot of different cultures utilize this plant in different forms. Some people eat it, have it within their diet. They can make teas out of it. Particularly the tatavium, it was for ceremonial purposes. So it was for cleansing, for smudging before we entered into a gathering or into ceremony or into our sweat lodges. So this would help us cleanse our spirit internally as well as externally. We also had a hummingbird sage. This plant itself does not have any medicinal purposes, but it's a very, very great tea for the summer or the fall. So hopefully I will see some of you afterwards, and you can go ahead and smell these. They all have a different smell. Then we have our beautiful black sage. Black sage itself, it does have a lot of medicinal purposes, particularly for women. So later on today, if you are women in here, I would highly suggest you look up some of the purposes for this plant. It's a great tea. And then we have our grandfather oak tree. So this is a baby oak, and this is a lot of the reasons I'm still here today. This oak tree produces acorns, as we all know, and acorns were a huge part of our diet. It was probably at least 80% of our diet. And today, I'm pretty sure we're constantly walking on acorns, thinking of them as nothing. The squirrels you see gather them, we walk over them, they're just all over the floor. But thousands of years ago, this helped my people survive. This is what we would go out and gather. And we would share space with each other. And we would sing songs with each other. And not only that, the time and effort that it would take to be able to do this, it takes a whole year once you have gathered your acorns before you can even utilize them to turn them into flour to be able to eat them. Can you guys imagine gathering and waiting a whole year to eat the particular thing that you gathered? That's insane to think about. But that is kind of that is 100% what my ancestors would do. And then these were a huge part of our trade. So this oak tree is a lot of the reason why I'm here. Outside of the fact, once these traditions and customs were pulled from us, and we weren't allowed to go out and gather anymore, that's when our diet changed. And that's when corruption happened, and that's when the trauma started, which affected all of our diets and our health. If you guys have the time later on today, I would even suggest to look up the health benefits behind an acorn. They're very, very extreme. So it makes a lot of sense why it's not in our diet. It makes a lot of sense why it's not within our schools. Why we're not serving acorn bread or flour or tortillas. You can make tortillas out of acorn flour. So just a thought. Also, I wanted to share this one with you. This is a very special plant relative as well, and we have a picture of it right on the corner. I do apologize, the table's in the way. So the milkweed is right here. It's very beautiful in spring. It has these long stems, they look gorgeous, they have pink flowers all over them. But then when it comes to fall and winter, which is currently our season we are in right now, we would go out and gather these. And today, for those of you that will be staying after school, you'll see it looks like a stick, like a dried stick. And you probably walk past it all the time and don't even realize that it's actually cordage. It's actually a plant that you are able to turn into a rope. Let me show you. Is our traditional cordage. We can obtain cordage from a lot of different plant relatives. This just happens to be one of them, and this is not even our strongest cordage. So, like for our tamols, well, particularly tatamium didn't do it, but for tamols, there is cordage that was utilized, and that is from the plant relative of yucca. And then you can also make cordage from native stinging nettle, dogbane, narrow leaf milkweed, which is the one that we will be working with today, which is also this plant. So it's just unbelievable for you guys to possibly think that every day you probably walk under oak trees, you pass by narrow leaf milkweed that looks like a stick, and you probably step on it, not knowing that if you ever needed it, you can actually turn it into a piece of rope. Not knowing if, God forbid, you couldn't walk into a grocery store and purchase food anymore, you can actually gather those acorns and survive on them. So that's why it's so important for me to come out and to be able to tell you guys of these traditions that I no longer was even able to grow up with myself. I myself am also from Los Angeles County. I grew up in the Antelope Valley. I grew up believing that I came from Hispanic descent. Reality, I do have Hispanic descent within me, of course, due to what has happened. But in the midst of that, I didn't learn any of my traditions. I didn't learn any of my culture. I didn't learn any of my songs. I do not know my language, other than what I was able to express to you today with introducing myself. And that hurts. Not knowing your language as you're growing up and as you're learning who you are as a person. So I challenge each and every one of you, if you don't know your history, if you don't know where your roots are, if you don't know where you come from, if you don't know your customs, I really challenge you to learn them. Talk to your grandparents, talk to your family, and I know you probably hear this 5 million times, but you knowing where you come from is going to help you later on in life to not get lost. Because it's really, really easy to get lost in this world, especially once we leave high school. So knowing these things, you can always come back to your roots. And that's kind of what helped me ground myself within my roots of what I was learning. Also, when we go out and we gather, a lot of people don't even think that, or even know for that matter, how we would go about collecting our cordage and obtaining it and turning it into cordage. So we would use rocks. Rocks were our #1 go-to for a lot of things. Rocks were what we would use. We would break the cordage up, and then there's a whole process that I cannot wait to show the students in regards to a braid. And you kind of twist and braid the cordage. And it's very important while you're even gathering to be in good energy and to be in good spirit, which is why we would do cleansing of our white sage. And it's also very important in the midst of gathering that we remember to always give before we receive. Because in our custom, we cannot take before we give. It would be the same premise as in today if we were to go to the grocery store, walk in, and get whatever we needed and walk right back out. So I don't know anybody that thinks that that's okay. So hopefully, if you were to ever try to do any of these customs or want to be a part of any of these customs, you would be open to remembering that we do not take before we give. And that's kind of how we have gotten to where we are. When the Europeans arrived, unfortunately, a lot of that is exactly what happened. A lot of things were taken and nothing was given back, and we continue to take and take. And due to that, we've lost a lot. We've lost a lot of our history, we lost a lot of our knowledge, and now we're digging to find it. So I do want to tell you guys, I do appreciate you listening and being open to learning and to knowing who these traditional lands were and who lived on them prior to you guys being here. So again, it's the Fernando Tatavium. I would love for you guys to possibly, if you have time, we're right in your backyard. We're a couple blocks away. You're more than welcome to stop by the tribal office. We have a lot of community events. We go out gathering often. If you guys are ever open to wanting to learn to gather, and even learn some of the ways of us traditionally cooking. So, thank you again. So just curious, because I know this is a very uncomfortable situation, but I do want to keep this in mind for everybody. The only way you grow is when you're uncomfortable. So even a seed knows that. And I know that's crazy to think, but think about it. A seed has to be extremely uncomfortable in a little tiny shell to then want to pop through, go through the soil, and become whatever it's meant to be. And I had to do that myself. I had to put myself in multiple uncomfortable situations to allow myself to be able to learn some of the things that I have been able to learn to come and tell the stories of my ancestors. So do any of you happen to have any questions that would allow yourself to be uncomfortable in the midst of growing, pertaining to the tribe, pertaining to the plant, or anything that you would like to know that you didn't know? No uncomfortability? Alrighty. Well, I really hope to see. Yes?
Hi, I'm Julie, government here. How many, you said there are 3 lineages and you're 1. How many members of these other lineages are there still currently around?
Quite a few of us. In total, we have, and I know this number sounds big, but it's actually very small compared to other tribes. In total, we have close to 1,000. So in the mixture of all 3 lineages, we currently have close to 1,000 tribal members enrolled. And we are still fighting for federal recognition. So my tribe is not federally recognized. So we have been fighting my entire life. And I'm currently a mother, and I hope and pray that one day my children will be able to see the federal recognition. So if you guys are open to coming and learning about us and learning about our fight and just being a part of it, it would mean so much to us because every person's voice here definitely counts. Thank you. Yes?
Mr. Ibarra, I'm an English teacher. Quick question for students to know. What is the importance of federal recognition?
So federal recognition would do a lot for us. I know a lot of people think like, oh, you guys would just get fact checks all the time, which would be great. I mean, I would not deny a check if they want to give me a check. But federal recognition would open the rights for us to sit at certain tables and actually have a voice. So we are able to be invited to multiple meetings and do multiple things, but our voice is very minimal due to the fact of us not having federal recognition. So it's harder for us to fight for our lands, it's harder for us to obtain our lands, it's harder for us to maybe want to gather in certain areas. We do have rights to certain parts, but not everywhere. So it's very hard for me to like go and gather the milkweed that I went out to gather to be able to come and show you guys how to make the portage. I can't gather anywhere. It's actually illegal. I can actually get a ticket for it in certain areas. So the federal recognition would allow us that. And it would allow us to have a stronger voice in the rights of a lot of ceremonial, sacred places that we are still today fighting for, to be able to go. Thank you for asking that. That's a great question. Nobody else? Well, I do thank you guys. Like I said, these are our three most important plant relatives: our white sage, our coast live oak, and our narrow leaf milkweed. Yes, thank you. Yes.
So within the 1,000 or so that are still here, is there a tribal structure? Like you're clearly a spokesperson, but is there someone who's sort of leading everything? Like how is your group organized?
So we're a sovereign nation, and it's like a tribe. So we have a tribal president, we have a tribal government, we have senators. Yeah, so it's like a sovereign nation within itself. We just don't have the federal recognition that, you know, even though we do have our state recognition, which allows us to do a lot of our gathering, the federal recognition would open up quite a few other doors for us.
Is the presidency just sort of a democratic structure?
Yeah, I guess you can definitely say that. Yes. Yeah, in that format. Thank you. That was a good question as well. Thank you for that. Okay. And then I do want to go just into, like I was stating, with the black sage. So with our black sage, you guys, this is very important to us due to, like for women, like I was saying, you can collect these and you can gather them and dry them out. They turn into a beautiful tea that's really good for menstrual cramps, for any issues with your stomach going on. So males can also utilize this, but I would definitely say it's more for a woman. So for anybody that is going through stuff, or your parents are going through anything, I would say if you can find this, this is great. And then with our hummingbird sage, even though there's no medicinal purposes, every single sage does have a format of an antidepressant. So that's really, I thought that was very unique to know, due to the fact that a lot of people do put this within their water, and they do just have it to flavor their water. So technically you're constantly drinking an antidepressant. So it's really good, and you can even utilize that in the form of white sage as well. So any of the sages are antidepressant sages. I totally forgot to mention about this. These are black walnuts, and these are also throughout this entire area. I would say you tend to see these a lot more in LA, but these were also a huge part of trade for us. And we can collect these, we can gather these. We would utilize all forms of our California black walnut. So we can crack them open. We can eat the walnut. We would turn the walnut itself into, there is a dice game that we would trade, and we would obtain from local tribes. So the Tataviam itself would not make these, but it was for trade. And it's a dice game amongst the Chumash. Then the outside of the black walnut, you can crunch up and you can turn into a dye. And this is also said to believe possibly one of the plant relatives that we would make for paint. So you can also crack this up, cook it down, and turn it into black paint. You can turn it into a dye, you can dye your clothes. You can eat the walnut, and then we would have, with the black walnut and the dice, we would also put a lot of abalone shells within the dice, and that's how you would be able to know what the numbers are and what was worth the trade is based on the abalone. That would be connected to the black walnut. So I thought that that was very unique to learn as well. We would utilize all aspects of all the plants, and I didn't know this, but even deep within the soil, all these plants are connected. So there is a whole nother connection amongst these plants within the roots, which is why the oak trees were so vital and so important for us. They would definitely be able to send out, it's kind of like it's like extra nutrients amongst the native plants. So them being collectively around each other in the midst of growing with how our traditional lands were very, very important, which is also why it was vitally important for us to have our cultural burns, which in today's time is our prescribed burns. Prescribed burns are great, but if we had federal recognition, it might be one of the doors that we can sit at the table to possibly start having some of our cultural burns. The cultural burns are vitally important because it allows the new growth for the next year to come by. It also helps with all these fires that we are constantly having. We would not have if we were allowed access to be able to steward our traditional land and have some of our cultural burns. It would help us with bringing back some traditional native plants. There's particular plants that come after the fire that let us know that the soil is good and that we're able to grow again. And one of those plants is a fire poppy. And I absolutely love this plant. You cannot find this plant anywhere outside of once a cultural burn has come through that area. So us being able to get federal recognition would hopefully let us sit at tables with national parks, state parks, governments, and be able to have those types of conversations to have those traditions again. And something to be able to pass down to the next generation, something that I wasn't unfortunately able to learn. With that, it would also allow our oak trees to be some of the most healthiest and resilient, which they once were. Today we are losing thousands of oak trees, particularly in Thousand Oaks, due to the lack of us probably having a lot of our cultural burns. A lot of trees that fall over, it's due to them not being able to get rooted in, and once the burn comes through, they collapse over, which causes tons of more problems outside of us being able to go back and steward our land and do things in the proper form that our ancestors have been doing for thousands and thousands of years. So if we continue to have that fight and that resilience, just as my ancestors once do, then I'm hoping one day we will be able to do stuff like that, and I would love to be on the forefront when that day does come as well. So cultural burns, if you guys ever get a survey for that, please say yes to those cultural burns because it would really help us. It would help with every single one of these plant relatives. It would help them flourish, grow much stronger, grow more resilient, and it would allow the soil to be cleansed as well. Just like with anything, we need constant cleansing, and so does Mother Earth. Mother Earth is not cleansed right now, which is why we're having so many climate issues. And hopefully one day we'll be able to realize that if some of the traditional stewards were more allowed to steward some of this land, we can possibly bring it back to its traditional order of all our plant relatives. With us even having the Garcia and the Ortiz lineage, even though I didn't touch very steadily on those two, we are all very connected. We do have a lot of our cultural gatherings now. We do have our winter solstice. We do have our summer solstice. We are bringing back our language. We are bringing back our songs. So little by little, it is helping. And the fight is really prevailing, and it is going through. Even though we haven't obtained and had all the success that we have wanted to have, we are making movements. So I'm very grateful for everybody that has supported us, that has been allies to us, that is willing to hear our story, wanting to know the history of our people. So it means very, very much to us. So thank you. another thing. It was unbelievable for me to find out that this was made by a gourd. So this is how big our traditional gourds used to be. So it just goes to show that if we were able to steward our land, we can possibly bring our plant relatives back to their original ways. And this would be like proof of it. Our gourds, as we know, a lot of people think that all Native people use drums, which is not true. Actually, the people that are more West Coast over here, we use rattles and we use clapper sticks. So gourds, not this particular size of a gourd, but gourds were definitely one of our instrumental tools for us while we were singing our traditional songs, and as well as clapper sticks. So Tataviam was not a drum clan by any means. So singing this gourd was unbelievable. Thought that was something very important for you guys to know as well. So it was also really crazy for me to think and believe, how did my ancestors survive? How did they survive being here throughout all these centuries and all these years? We were one of the smallest tribes. We were surrounded by the Tongva, we were surrounded by the Chumash, and the Chumash is an extremely huge tribe. And the only way that I can think of that is that we had to be extremely great salesmen. We had to be great businessmen. We had to go out, we had to know our plant relatives. We had to be able to seek what those that were around us needed and are wanted, so that they would not take over, and they would not, we would not have any form of battles in regards to our villages, to our sites. We were able to live amongst each other very peacefully. And I think it's definitely due to us being able to go and get all the acorns and being able to trade amongst the Chumash, being able to trade amongst the Tongva. The black walnuts themselves, like I stated, are mainly within LA County. So with them being in LA County, there were a huge trade value, more than likely amongst the Tongva as well as the Tataviam, for us to be able to survive and not have any extreme wars amongst all three tribes. We were also able to, trade amongst the Cahuenga as well as all the other tribes that were around us, and that's incredible for me to even believe. That we were such a small little tribe, and yet we still are here thousands and thousands of years ago, considering I come from one of those lineages. So if you ever find yourself in a tight spot, it's definitely worth knowing those around you and what they need and what you're able to bring to that table and what value you have amongst your area, amongst yourself to bring for that. So keep that in mind for your future.
Ms. Samaniego for sharing all this wonderful knowledge and information. If we can just give her one more round of applause. Thank you for joining us today, Mighty Tigers. If you all can just wait in your seats until the bell rings, please. Thank you.